Hey everyone, welcome back to Endless Money Pits. This is a 2017 Honda CB500X, and today I'll show you how to install a set of Givi Crash Bars. Crash Bars will provide some protection to the engine and fairings in the event of a drop or a light wipeout, and they look pretty cool too. They didn't come with any instructions, and I'll have to get a couple different bolts at the hardware store to make these work with the skid plate I installed in the last video, but that's no big deal, so let's get to it. Here are the tools that I used for this job. A hacksaw, impact driver, breaker bar, torque wrench, socket wrench, a couple socket extensions, 12mm socket, 13mm socket, 14mm socket, 17mm socket, 12mm wrench, 5mm hex bit, Phillips number 1 bit, the closest thing I could find to a plastic mallet, and a floor jack. For this job, I also needed a rear stand, magnetic bull, a rag, a piece of cardboard, the key, the crash bar kit, and 2 bolts this size. I couldn't find these for a good price online, but the local Ace hardware store had them in stock for about $4 a piece. These 2 bolts for the upper frame mounts are different lengths. The longer one goes on the left side, the shorter one goes on the right side, and they both require washers. There are links in the description for everything I used. I put the bike on a rear stand just to make it easier to work on, but it turned out later that I really needed that stand. I'll start by removing the seat. Each side panel has 2 screws to remove, and then they should just pop right off. Pull straight out. The crash bars will fit like this. 2 mounting points on the frame with the bars connecting to each other behind the nose. Turning the handlebars all the way to the right gave me just enough room to reach both ends of these bolts. My breaker bar didn't fit in this tight spot, so I had to pull on the socket wrench pretty hard. I unscrewed the nuts, but left the bolts in to keep everything lined up for now. The frame bolts can be removed with a 14mm socket, but it's best to only remove one at a time to keep the motor from shifting too much. Each frame bolt also has a metal spacer that you'll need to reinstall with the crash bars. I forgot to reinstall the spacer on this first one and had to put it back later. Leave the bolts loose for now so the bars can move around. Both sides mount up the same way, but when I got to this point, the motor had shifted so much that I couldn't get this bolt back in. I positioned the floor jack as far forward under the skid plate as possible, and very carefully lifted the bike while holding it to make sure it didn't tip over. Notice that the front tire is still on the ground, and this wouldn't be possible without a rear stand. A little inconvenient, but that did the trick. When installing the upper frame mount bolts, the longer bolt goes on the left side and the shorter bolt goes on the right. Make sure to use a washer in the factory spacer with each of these upper bolts. I had to lift up on the subframe for the nose just a little bit to remove these bolts. This cylindrical piece is used to join the left and right sides, but you'll need to install the rubber O-rings like this first. The crash bars connect to each other behind the nose using 3 nuts and bolts from the kit. The lowest bolt also uses a spacer, so I'll install that one first. Each of these bolts has a 12mm head, but all 3 nuts are 13mm. I had to get the lowest bolt somewhat tight before I could get nuts on the top 2 bolts. I never found a torque spec for these bolts, but after installation, the bike had a noticeable rattling noise, and it turned out to be the spacer on the lower bolt vibrating between the left and right crash bars. I tightened up all 3 bolts a little more, and the noise went away. The lower frame mounting points need to be tightened to 33 foot-pounds, and the upper mounts should be torqued to 44 foot-pounds. The floor jack can now be removed. Now I'll install the plastic trim pieces. I didn't have a plastic mallet handy, so I used a rag and a regular hammer. The Givi nameplates just need 4 screws each, but the kit came with 16 screws, so I guess you don't have to worry about losing any. I spent about 10 minutes trying to install these side panels before I realized they were interfering with the upper frame mounts on the crash bars. The only solution was to cut out a small piece from each side with a hacksaw to make them fit. Much better. Now we just need to reinstall the seat, making sure all the hooks fall into place. I have a lot more videos covering these Honda 500 series motorcycles, including the last one I uploaded about installing the skid plate, so check those out before you go. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more of the best DIY videos on the internet. And until next time, just keep throwing money at it.